50 points of downforce. That's what Lewis Hamilton told the world he lost at Spa. And for a few days, nobody at Ferrari said a word to correct him. That silence is the story. You've probably seen the headline already. Hamilton collides with George Russell at Les Combes on lap 1, picks up a 5-second penalty, finishes 4th anyway, and tells Dutch broadcaster Viaplay he was missing 50 points of downforce for the rest of the race. Big number, dramatic number. The kind of number that makes a podium miss sound like a moral victory. Here's what they didn't tell you at the time. Ferrari's own engineers went back, ran the data, and found the real figure was 10 points. Not 50, 10. A fifth of what their own driver said, on camera, to a national broadcaster. Keep that gap in mind. It comes back. Now, before we open this file properly, do two things. Hit subscribe, because when a team's internal numbers stop matching their driver's public numbers, that's not a one-time story, that's a pattern, and you'll want to be here for the next chapter. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, because how you read this next part depends a lot on whether you've watched Ferrari manage a driver narrative before, or whether this is new to you. So let's follow the chain from the start. Lap 1. Hamilton makes contact with Russell's Mercedes. Russell spins into the gravel and is out. Hamilton continues, but his right barge board is damaged. He picks up a 5-second penalty for the incident. The steward's decision itself has already split opinion. Plenty of fans online called it harsh, a racing incident dressed up as a foul, and that debate is loud enough on its own. But that's not the mechanism we're chasing today. Today it's what happens after the penalty, inside the walls of Maranello. Hamilton drops behind Oscar Piastri because of the penalty, then claws his way back past the McLaren before the flag. On raw effort, it's a strong recovery drive. And when he's asked about it afterward, he doesn't talk about the penalty, he talks about the damage. He says, and this is close to his exact words, that he still had great pace, but he was losing something like 50 points of something. Downforce, in context, given all that, he says he'll take 4th. Notice the framing, notice what that sentence does. It quietly moves the conversation away from the contact, away from the stewards, away from the 5 seconds, and onto a technical wound that sounds catastrophic. 50 points. That's the kind of number that ends a championship fight in a driver's own telling of it, except it isn't the number. According to the Italian edition of motorsport.com, Ferrari's engineers studied the telemetry and concluded Hamilton's assessment was, in their words, overly pessimistic. Their figure, 10 points of downforce lost, not 50. That still cost him around 1/10 and a half per lap, which, to be fair to him, is real and it is measurable. But it is not the number he gave a broadcaster on record. So here's the question nobody in the paddock is asking out loud. If Ferrari had the real data within reach, why did nobody at the team stand up in that moment and say, actually, it wasn't 50, it was 10? Why did the correction come days later, buried in an Italian outlet instead of same day from the team itself? There are two ways to read that silence, and neither one is comfortable. One reading, Ferrari simply didn't check the numbers fast enough to correct him in real time, and the truth came out on its own schedule, no design involved. Possible. Teams are busy after a race weekend, and telemetry review takes time. The other reading, Ferrari let the bigger number stand because it was useful. A 7-time world champion recovering from 50 points of lost downforce to finish 4th is a compelling story. It protects him from criticism about the contact with Russell in the first place. It turns a 5-second penalty and a first lap mistake into a tale of resilience against mechanical disaster. Nobody at Ferrari had to lie. They just didn't rush to correct the version that made everyone look better. Hold that thought, because there's a second piece of this that makes the timing question sharper. Hamilton's stop wasn't just slow because of the penalty he was serving. He was in the pit lane 9 seconds longer than his teammate Charles Leclerc, who'd pitted immediately before him. Post-penalty stops usually run a little slower anyway, that's normal. But this one had an added complication. A mechanic tried to adjust Hamilton's front wing after the green light had already been given, the signal to go. The mechanic was knocked over as the car pulled away. He wasn't seriously hurt, but that is not a minor detail. That's a pit crew making a change to the car after the moment they were supposed to be finished, in the middle of a 5-second penalty service, with cameras and stewards watching. So now you've got two threads tangled together. A driver publicly overstating his own damage by a factor of 5, and a pit crew that, in the same stop, fumbled a wing adjustment badly enough to send someone to the ground. Which one do you think Ferrari would rather the headlines focus on? A colorful quote about lost downforce, or footage of a mechanic getting knocked over during a botched adjustment? That's the real reason this story matters, not because Hamilton exaggerated. Drivers exaggerate after hard races all the time, that's not new. And it's not really a scandal on its own. It matters because the louder, more dramatic version of events happened to be the one that kept attention away from Ferrari's own operational mistake in the box. Whether that's coincidence or convenience, Ferrari has said nothing publicly to clarify it either way. And there's a wider pattern worth sitting with here too, because this isn't the first time a team has let a driver's public framing of a bad day run further than the internal data supports. If you've watched this channel before, you've seen versions of this play out with other teams, other quotes, other numbers that didn't quite survive contact with the telemetry. So tell me in the comments, is this a pattern you're starting to recognize across the sport, or do you think this is just one race, one quote blown out of proportion? And if you think Ferrari owes Hamilton or the public a direct correction on this, smash that like button so I can count the votes on that side. Here's where the numbers actually land. For the record, Hamilton finished 5 7/10 of a second behind third-place man Max Verstappen, having lost around 6.5 seconds total to the damage by Ferrari's own calculation. Not 50 points worth of race-defining chaos, a costly but survivable technical issue on top of a penalty for a first-lap incident that's still being argued about separately. He came out of the weekend back in second place in the championship, ahead of Russell, but 45 points behind race winner Kimi Antonelli, and he lost ground to his own teammate Leclerc in the process. So here's the verdict. This wasn't Ferrari protecting Hamilton out of loyalty, and it wasn't Hamilton deliberately lying to the cameras. It was something quieter and honestly more telling. A team that had the real number and didn't rush to put it out there, because the bigger number did a job for them. It gave their driver a flattering story, and it gave their own pit crew's mistakes somewhere to hide in plain sight, underneath a headline about 50 points of downforce. That's the real reason Ferrari let Hamilton's story go unchallenged. Not because it was true, because it was convenient for both of them, at exactly the moment convenience mattered most. Agree or disagree? The comments are the courtroom on this one. So tell me straight, does Ferrari owe a public correction here? Or is this just how every team quietly manages the story after a hard weekend? Say which side you're on and say why. This story is not over. Ferrari's telemetry keeps talking even when their press office doesn't, and when the next number doesn't match the next quote, you'll want to be here for it. Hit subscribe, hit like if you've made your call, and drop your verdict below. Until the next one.